My name is Jackson Harless, and I'm a freshman here at Purdue majoring in data analytics. And for my Pi project, I used my Raspberry Pi 4B to set up a VPN and a Pi hole or ad blocker to demonstrate and put the things I've learned in CNIT 176 into practice. First, I'm going to explain 5 pieces of component architecture that we have learned about in class that are related to my project. The first one, a big part of a VPN connection is the software used to handle the connection. The software downloaded must be held in different types of memory at different times, such as RAM, ROM, read-only memory, different levels of cache memory, and secondary memory in the form of my micro SD card. Next up, a basic connection of the project to this class is the I/O devices I used, input-output devices. In order to go through the software setup process for both the VPN and the ad blocker, I had to plug in a keyboard and mouse to my Pi to interact with the display on the monitor. The keyboard and mouse are both input devices, and the monitor used to interface with the Pi is an output device. The keyboard, more specifically, is an example of a programmed I/O because it is directly controlled by the CPU. Another big concept related to the VPN and ad blocker is a client-server connection via SSH specifically. The Pi in both cases access the server as everything is running through the Pi for permissions and sent to the client, which in this case was my laptop. SSH refers to the Secure Shell Protocol, which essentially just ensures a secure connection between the client and server because it encrypts the data being sent between them. Another concept that we've talked about in class that is related to my project is the brain of the operation, the CPU. The CPU handles a lot, including organizing and instructing all other components through the process of running the software program instructions, handles and organizes input from I/O devices previously mentioned, and manages communication with memory. A good example of the CPU as well as the memory's contribution is the software setup. The Raspbian OS is what I use to interact with the Pi and run the software on. Every time I booted up the OS, the CPU was in charge of running the process of pulling necessary instructions from my micro SD card where Raspbian is held. Then, as I'm using Raspbian and going through the setup, the CPU handles all of the relaying between the I/O devices, memory, and different components, doing different tasks to complete the instruction given at the time. As I've mentioned multiple times when talking about other components, the operating system was a huge part of this project. I wouldn't have been able to do a single step of either project without the OS. Without an operating system, program instructions must be loaded into memory by hand. I have no place or ability to store, retrieve, or manipulate files, and no ability to control peripheral devices. The basic definition of an OS is it's a collection of computer programs that integrate the hardware resources and make them available to a user in a way that allows the user to access the computer in a productive and efficient manner. So basically, the OS is what allows me to interact with the Pi and access the memory and functionality of the CPU and I/O devices as mentioned before. This is crucial because without the Raspbian OS, I wouldn't have been able to download necessary software, set up an SSH connection with my laptop, and manipulate specific files to set up the VPN connection and ad blocker. Now I'm going to talk about the procedures I followed for the Raspberry Pi VN. First, I had to set up and download the Raspbian OS. Then I was able to enter a command that handled the downloading Pi VPN process for me. After the software was downloaded on my Pi, I followed the guide through a series of setup steps. These were simply just answering questions on how I want to set it up and saying yes to warnings. After getting through the installer, I was prompted to reboot the OS, and then I entered a series of commands in the control terminal to open a VPN file that held all of my information necessary for the connection. Next, I got on my laptop, the client that I wanted to use to connect the VPN to, and used FileZilla, which is a software for managing files, and set up a wireless connection between my Pi and laptop to copy the file onto my laptop into OpenVPN, which is another software used to read the information and manage the connection. Some troubleshooting I encountered was I got stuck setting up the remote connection between the Pi and my personal computer and tried changing my password just in case the characters on my laptop and the Pi are different. However, this didn't fix the issue, so I tried using the WLAN IP address instead of my Pi's IP address with my simple password, and this fixed the issue and I got the connection. I'm currently stuck completing the final connection between the OpenVPN and my Pi VPN so it is active. I think there's an issue that I'm unaware of or port forwarding issues. The guide mentioned that if the connection doesn't work, it's likely related to port forwarding issues, which is related to the Wi-Fi router, and I can't access the Wi-Fi router. So I'm still talking with my peers and TAs to try to find the issue and finish setting up the connection.
So I have to use theirs. You just want to press the speed to take us what? This one.
The procedures I followed for the ad blocker were pretty simple. I went through a very similar process as the VPN. I entered a command to download the Pi-hole software and went through a similar setup process following the guide. In short, it was setting up all of my information and a DNS server for the ad blocker. I was then able to access a web page from a browser on my Pi to the dashboard that offers options to change settings and see which ads are being blocked in real time. I then had to make sure again that my laptop and Pi were connected to the same Wi-Fi network, and then change my laptop's DNS settings so that my laptop's Wi-Fi connection will only run through my Pi. I didn't have many issues with the ad blocker. I had a slight hiccup when trying to access the web page to see the dashboard, but it turns out that the guide said to put an extra backslash at the end of the command, but it worked when I took that extra backslash away. And yeah, that was really all the troubleshooting I had. Overall, I thought this project was a good experience. I've struggled in this class because I struggled to understand the concepts, so I was pretty nervous for this project, but it helped me understand some of the concepts a little bit better. If I had to do anything different, I would probably start a little sooner so that I had more time to visit office hours and talk to the professor to get a better understanding of the project and just have more time to fully understand what I was doing. So the project went well, but yeah, I just wish I started sooner so I had some more time to fully grasp it.